The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Jake Morrison walked through them with his head held high, even though he knew what was coming. Behind him followed two other humans, Captain Lisa Parker from the Earth Defense Force and Dr. Alex Chen, humanity's top scientist. The three of them represented all of mankind in this moment that would change everything. The chamber was enormous, bigger than any stadium on Earth. 47 different alien species sat in a circle around the center where the humans now stood. Some looked like giant insects with multiple eyes. Others appeared to be made of living crystal that glowed with inner light. A few resembled nothing Jake had ever imagined, beings of pure energy contained in mechanical bodies. High Counselor Zethkar rose from his seat. His crystalline body pulsed with colors that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice echoed from speakers built into the walls because no human throat could make such sounds. "Representatives of the species called humanity," Zethkar began, "you stand before this council to hear our final judgment. For 3 cycles, we have debated your fate. For 3 cycles, we have examined your actions since first contact was made with your world." Jake felt his heart beating faster but kept his face calm. Earth had joined the Galactic Council only 5 years ago. At first, everyone had been excited. Humanity would take its place among the stars, learning from older and wiser civilizations. They would share knowledge and work together for peace across the galaxy. It had not gone as planned. "Your species," Zethkar continued, "has shown itself to be violent beyond measure. In 5 short years, you have expanded to 12 star systems. You have built weapons that violate every treaty of peace. You solve problems with force instead of negotiation. You are too dangerous to remain among civilized beings." Jake wanted to argue but knew it was pointless. Yes, humans had expanded quickly, but only to worlds that nobody else wanted. Yes, they had built strong defenses, but only after learning that space was full of pirates and hostile forces that the Council seemed unable or unwilling to stop. Yes, they preferred action to endless debates that accomplished nothing. The Council saw all of this as proof that humans were barbaric warmongers. They could not understand that humanity simply refused to be victims. Therefore, Zethkar announced, the Galactic Council hereby banishes humanity from all civilized space. You will return to your home system immediately. You will remain within the boundaries of what you call the Sol System. Any attempt to leave will result in the complete destruction of your species. The chamber erupted in alien sounds that might have been approval. Jake noticed that not all the representatives seemed happy with this decision. A few sat in silence, their body language suggesting disagreement, but the majority had spoken. Captain Parker stepped forward. Her military training kept her voice steady despite the anger Jake could see in her eyes. "With respect, High Counselor, humanity has never started a war with any council member. We have defended ourselves when attacked. We have helped council forces fight pirates and raiders. How is self-defense a crime?" A new voice answered her. Counselor Veltan of the Altarian Empire was one of the few aliens who looked somewhat human, though his skin was blue and his eyes were solid black. "Captain, your people's idea of help involves weapons that can destroy entire fleets. You fight with a brutality that shocks even veteran warriors. You show no mercy to enemies and no patience for proper procedures." Dr. Chen spoke up for the first time. "What you call brutality, we call efficiency. When pirates attack trade ships, we stop them permanently instead of negotiating with them for years while more innocent beings die. When raiders threaten colonies, we eliminate the threat instead of forming committees to study the problem." "Exactly," Zethkar said, his crystal body flashing brighter. "You think violence is the answer to everything. You have no understanding of diplomacy or peaceful solutions. Your very presence makes other species nervous and disrupts the harmony we have worked thousands of years to achieve." Jake finally found his voice. "You're afraid of us," he said quietly. "Not because we're evil or destructive, but because we're effective. In 5 years, we've accomplished more than some council members have managed in centuries. We've cleaned up pirate nests that you've been negotiating with for decades. We've explored regions of space you claimed were too dangerous. We've solved problems you said were unsolvable." The chamber fell silent. Jake continued, knowing these might be the last words any human would speak to the council. "You're not banishing us because we're dangerous to innocent people. You're banishing us because we're dangerous to your comfortable, stagnant way of life. You've forgotten how to grow, how to explore, how to push boundaries. Seeing us do it reminds you of what you've lost, and that terrifies you more than any weapon we could build." Zethakar's body pulsed with angry red light. "Your arrogance proves our point. Guards, escort these creatures to their ship. Make sure they understand that any violation of the banishment will result in the immediate sterilization of their home world." As security forces moved to surround them, Jake activated his personal communicator. The device sent a coded message that would reach Earth in hours. 3 simple words that would change everything. Operation Prometheus authorized. That date. Walk back to their ship felt like a funeral march. Other council representatives watched them go with expressions ranging from satisfaction to regret. Jake noticed that some of the smaller, weaker species looked almost envious. They understood what it meant to be dismissed and ignored by the powerful. At the docking bay, their escort stopped. The lead guard, a massive creature covered in metallic scales, spoke through a translator device. "You have 1 day to leave council space. After that, any human vessel found outside your system will be destroyed without warning." Jake nodded and led his team aboard their ship. As soon as the airlock sealed, Captain Parker was on the radio contacting Earth. Dr. Chen immediately began encrypting all the data they had gathered about council technology and weaknesses. The ship's engines fired up and they pulled away from the massive space station that served as the council's headquarters. Jake watched it shrink in the view screen and thought about what came next. Earth had spent the last 5 years learning everything they could about galactic civilization. They had studied council technology, mapped trade routes, identified resource-rich systems that nobody claimed, and most importantly, they had made contact with species that the council had rejected or ignored. Humanity was about to be alone again, cut off from the galaxy and surrounded by enemies. The council expected them to retreat to Earth and accept their isolation like obedient children. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 5 years had passed since the council threw humanity out of civilized space. The Sol system looked nothing like it had before the banishment. What the galactic powers thought was a prison had become something they never could have imagined. Captain Daniel Brooks stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance as it moved away from the shadow of Europa. The massive ship was twice as long as any council vessel and armed with weapons that would make their enemies weep with fear. Around him, dozens of other warships moved in perfect formation through the asteroid belt. "Commander Hayes, give me a status report on the Ghost Fleet," Brooks ordered his second-in-command. Elena Hayes looked up from her control station with a smile that would have worried any council spy watching them. "All 73 ships are ready for combat, sir. The new AI systems are working perfectly, and our stealth technology is still invisible to their sensors." Brooks nodded and looked out at the fleet that surrounded them. Every ship had been built, in secret over the past 5 years. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt had worked day and night to create vessels that broke every rule the Council had ever made about weapons and warfare. The humans had learned something important during their brief time with the Council. The older races were not just afraid of human aggression. They were afraid of human innovation. While Council species took centuries to develop new technology, humans could adapt and improve existing designs in months. On Saturn's moon Titan, Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked in a laboratory that officially did not exist. The research station was hidden beneath miles of ice and rock invisible to any scanning technology the Council possessed. She was humanity's leading expert on something called fold space manipulation, a technology that could change everything. "Director Chen, we've done it!" Rodriguez called out to her supervisor as he entered the lab. Dr. Kevin Chen had been working on advanced propulsion systems since before the banishment. Now his work was about to pay off in ways that would terrify their enemies. "The void drive is stable?" Chen asked, looking at the readings on Rodriguez's screens. "More than stable. We can now move entire fleets across the galaxy in hours instead of years. The Council thinks space is too big for us to be a real threat. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Chen smiled and activated his communicator. "Admiral Sullivan, this is Chen. Project Void Drive is ready for field testing. We can begin moving ships to the target systems whenever you give the order." On Mars, the Colonial Assembly was voting on President Carter's latest expansion plan. The Red Planet had become humanity's second home, with over 10 million people living in cities that stretched across the surface. Representative Julie Mason stood before the packed auditorium where delegates from every human colony had gathered. "The Council believes they have caged us," Mason announced to the crowd. "They think Sol System is our prison. Today we prove that. It was actually our launching pad. The vote was unanimous. Every human colony, every space station, every mining operation in the system supported the expansion beyond Council space. They had spent 5 years preparing for this moment, and nobody was going to back down now." Admiral Kate Sullivan received the authorization while standing in the command center of the secret base on Pluto. The facility had been carved out of solid rock and ice, completely hidden from any detection system. Around her, the best military minds humanity had ever produced worked on plans that would reshape the galaxy. "General Webb, are our advance teams ready?" Sullivan asked the supreme commander of all human military forces. Marcus Webb looked up from a holographic map showing dozens of star systems beyond Council territory. Red dots marked targets for human expansion, while blue dots showed potential allies among the non-Council species they had been secretly contacting. "Our scouts have identified 47 systems that are perfect for colonization. Most of them have been ignored by the Council because they're too difficult to develop or too far from major trade routes. Perfect for us." Dr. Lisa Chang, head of Advanced Weapons Research, joined them at the planning table. Her team had spent the last 5 years developing technology that would make Council weapons look like children's toys. "The new plasma cannons are ready for deployment," Chang reported. "Our ships can now punch through Council shields like they're made of paper. And the quantum torpedoes will let us hit targets from distances they can't even imagine." President Carter appeared on the main screen from his office in New Geneva. Behind him stood Dr. Alex Parker, director of the Titan Project, and several other key figures in humanity's shadow government. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carter said, 5 years ago the Council told us we were too dangerous for civilized space. Today we begin proving them right." The first phase of Operation Prometheus launched 3 days later. 50 human ships equipped with the new void drive technology vanished from Sol System without triggering a single Council sensor. They reappeared in empty star systems hundreds of light years away, carrying the equipment and personnel needed to establish humanity's first secret colonies. Captain Steve Baker led the advance team to a planet the Council had designated as uninhabitable due to severe weather and unstable geology. His engineers, commanded by Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, began construction of what would become New Terra within hours of landing. "This world may be hostile," Baker told his people as they worked to establish their base, "but it's also rich in resources and completely outside Council territory. We'll turn it into a fortress they'll never see coming." Meanwhile, other human teams were making contact with species the Council had rejected or forgotten. The Zephyrians had been exiled centuries ago for refusing to submit to Council bureaucracy. The Kethvar had been ignored because their homeworld was too far from major trade routes. The Nexari had been dismissed as primitive because they preferred practical solutions to elegant theories. All of them were eager to work with humans who valued results over politics. Dr. Chris Williams, humanity's top physicist, established research facilities on 3 different worlds within the first month. His teams worked alongside alien scientists who had been frustrated by the Council's slow, committee-based approach to innovation. "We're not just building an empire," Williams told his staff during a secure communication. "We're creating a new kind of civilization, one based on merit instead of politics, innovation instead of tradition." Back in Sol system, the visible human forces continued their normal activities while the real work happened in secret. Council spy drones detected nothing unusual as mining ships went about their business, and patrol vessels followed predictable routes. The aliens had no idea that humanity was already spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, building an empire, in the shadows that would soon emerge to challenge everything the Council thought they knew about power. The mining world of Kepler 442b shook violently as another earthquake ripped through the ground beneath the human colony. Colonel Steve Baker watched his engineering teams work through the tremors without stopping, their equipment specially designed to handle the planet's unstable geology. The Council had marked this world as too dangerous for settlement, which made it perfect for humanity's first secret colony outside Sol system. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell wiped sweat from her forehead as she directed the construction of New Terra's main power facility. The building had to withstand earthquakes that would level most Council structures, but human engineering was built for harsh conditions. Her teams had learned to work with the planet's violent nature instead of fighting against it. "Colonel, we have movement on the northern ridge," called Sergeant Danny Lee from his observation post. "It's not natural. Something big is heading our way." Baker grabbed his binoculars and looked toward the rocky hills that surrounded their settlement. What he saw made him call for an immediate alert, but not an attack. The approaching figures were clearly intelligent and carrying what looked like a peace banner. The Zephyrians emerged from behind the rocks like living shadows. Their reptilian bodies moved with grace despite their size, and their scaled skin shifted colors to match their surroundings. The leader of the group was larger than the others, with intricate patterns carved into his scales that marked him as someone important. Chief Engineer Krex Tal approached the human settlement with curiosity rather than fear. His people had been watching these strange newcomers for weeks, amazed at how quickly they adapted to conditions that had taken the Zephyrians decades to master. The humans worked with an efficiency that reminded him of his own people before the Council had tried to control them. "Your people work with impressive skill," Krextal told Baker through a translation device his species had developed. "We have observed you adapt to this world's challenges in ways that took us many years to learn." Baker studied the alien leader carefully. The Zephyrians had been exiled from Council space over 2 centuries ago for refusing to submit to bureaucratic oversight. They had built their own civilization on worlds the Council considered worthless, developing technology that was different but often more practical than standard galactic designs. "We had to learn fast," Baker replied honestly. "This world doesn't give second chances to those who make mistakes." "Neither does the galaxy," Krextal said, with what might have been a smile. "Perhaps we should talk." The first meeting between humans and Zephyrians lasted 3 days. Both species had been rejected by the Council for similar reasons. They were too independent, too willing to take risks, too focused on results instead of proper procedures. The partnership that emerged from those discussions would change everything. Within weeks, human technology and Zephyrian knowledge of local conditions had transformed New Terra into a thriving industrial hub. The Zephyrians shared information about mineral deposits and weather patterns, while humans provided advanced manufacturing equipment and defensive systems. Dr. Maria Santos arrived on the colony ship Pioneer along with the next wave of human settlers. As humanity's top xenobiologist, Her job was to help different species work together effectively. What she found on New Terra exceeded her wildest hopes. "The integration is remarkable," Santos reported to Admiral Kate Sullivan during a secure transmission. "Human and Zephyrian children are already playing together and learning from each other. Their parents are sharing knowledge that would have taken decades to discover independently." Admiral Sullivan smiled as she watched the video feed from New Terra's Central Plaza. Human and alien families walked together through markets where both species sold goods and services. It was everything the Council claimed to represent, but had never actually achieved. Dr. Chris Williams established his first off-world research facility in partnership with Zephyrian scientists who had been frustrated by their isolation. Together, they began working on projects that combined human innovation with alien expertise in ways that produced breakthrough discoveries almost daily. "We're not just building colonies," Williams told his mixed species research team. "We're creating a new model for how different civilizations can work together." The success at New Terra caught the attention of other non-Council species who had been watching human expansion with interest. The Kethvar were a warrior people who had been dismissed by the Council as too aggressive. The Nexari were master, engineers whose practical approach to problem-solving had been rejected as inelegant by Council academics. Captain Linda Foster commanded the transport ship Unity as it carried diplomats to make contact with these potential allies. Her mission was to establish relationships with species that shared humanity's values of independence and innovation. The Kethvar homeworld was a harsh desert planet where survival required constant struggle against both the environment and predatory wildlife. When Foster's team landed, they were met by War Chief Gracton, whose scarred hide told the story of countless battles. "The Council fears warriors," Gracton told Foster through translators. "They prefer diplomats who talk instead of act. You humans understand that sometimes fighting is necessary." Foster nodded, thinking of her own people's history. "We've learned that peace is only possible when those who threaten it know there will be consequences." The Kethvar alliance was formalized within days. In exchange for human technology and support, the warrior species would provide military expertise and knowledge of frontier regions where Council influence was weak. The Nexari proved even more valuable as allies. Their species had spent centuries developing practical solutions to engineering problems that Council scientists considered too crude to study. Master Builder Vexhai showed human engineers how to construct buildings that could reshape themselves based on environmental conditions. "Your people think like we do," Vexhai explained to Lieutenant Mitchell during a joint construction project. "You see a problem and find the simplest way to solve it, not the most elegant way to avoid it." Back on Earth, President Carter received reports of successful alliances with growing excitement. Each new partnership brought humanity closer to building the kind of galactic civilization they had dreamed of when first joining the Council. "We're offering something the Council never could," Carter told his advisors during a cabinet meeting. "Real cooperation between equals instead of submission to ancient bureaucracies." The network of human colonies and allied species grew rapidly over the following months. Trade routes developed between worlds that had never communicated before. Scientific discoveries flowed freely between species that shared knowledge instead of hoarding it. Military cooperation ensured that pirates and raiders found no safe havens in the expanding Alliance territory. On New Terra, Colonel Baker watched. The sun set over a city that now housed 3 different species working together in harmony. Construction crews built homes designed for different physiologies, while children of various races played games that combined elements from multiple cultures. The Council had banished humanity for being too dangerous to their peaceful civilization. What they had actually done was free humans to build something better than anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. 2 years after the establishment of New Terra, the Galactic Council finally discovered what humanity had been doing beyond the Sol barrier. High Counselor Zethkar's crystalline body pulsed with violent red light as he stared at the intelligence. reports that covered his desk. The humans had not only violated their banishment, but had built an entire network of colonies and alliances. How is this possible? Zethkar demanded, as his intelligence chief, a spider-like being called Teklar, explained the situation. Our sensors showed no movement from their system. Our patrols detected no violations of the barrier. Teklar's multiple eyes flickered, with what might have been embarrassment. The humans appear to have developed stealth technology far beyond our capabilities. They have been moving fleets and establishing colonies for over 2 years without triggering a single detection system. The revelation sent shockwaves through the council chamber. Species that had felt safe under council protection suddenly realized that humanity had been expanding right under their noses. The humans they had dismissed as contained prisoners had become invisible ghosts capable of striking anywhere. Dispatch the enforcement fleet immediately, Zethkar commanded, his voice echoing with rage. Every ship we have. The human infection must be burned out before it spreads further. Commander Rex Taylor monitored council communications from his deep space, listening post hidden in the Oort cloud of a dead star system. His advanced sensors picked up the enforcement fleet mobilization within hours of the order being given. The encrypted message he sent to Admiral Sullivan would trigger the most important battle in human history. All Ghost Fleet units, this is Admiral Sullivan, came the broadcast from her flagship Retribution. Council enforcement fleet is moving toward our territory with orders to destroy every human they find. Today we show them the difference between hunting civilians and fighting. Soldiers! The enforcement fleet was massive, composed of over 300 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts, that each carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Council Admiral Zixthor commanded the fleet from his flagship Righteous Fury, confident that no force in the galaxy could stand against such overwhelming power. Target the human colonies first, Zixthor ordered his captains. Destroy every settlement and kill every human. Leave no survivors to spread their poison to other species. What Admiral Zixthor did not know was that his fleet had been under surveillance since the moment it left Council space, Captain Linda Foster's stealth destroyer. Phantom tracked their movements while transmitting detailed intelligence to human commanders throughout the region. The Battle of the Kepler Nebula began when the Council fleet emerged from hyperspace expecting to find defenseless human colonies. Instead, they found empty space and sensor readings that made no sense. Ships appeared and disappeared on their screens like ghosts, while their own vessels came under attack from enemies they could not see. Captain Daniel Brooks commanded a squadron of 12 heavy cruisers that materialized behind the Council formation before unleashing devastating plasma volleys. The new human weapons cut through Council shields like paper while their targets struggled to return fire against ships that vanished the moment they were detected. Enemy fleet is trying to reform, reported Commander Elena Hayes from her position at the tactical station. Their heavy units are moving to protect the smaller ships. Brooks smiled grimly as he watched the Council forces attempt formations designed for traditional warfare. They still don't understand what they're fighting. All squadrons, execute Pattern Omega. The human ships split into small groups that attacked from every direction at once. Council captains found themselves facing enemies that could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and disappear before retaliation was possible. The carefully planned fleet formations collapsed into chaos as ship after ship fell to invisible attackers. Dr. Amy Rodriguez's void drive technology proved decisive in the battle. Human vessels could literally tear holes in space-time to appear behind enemy lines or escape from overwhelming force. Council ships that had taken centuries to build were destroyed by enemies that seemed to move through space like it was their natural element. Council fleet, this is Admiral Sullivan, came the broadcast on open frequencies as the battle reached its peak. You came here to commit genocide against innocent civilians. Today you learn that humans protect their own. Admiral Zixthor watched, his mighty fleet crumble around him as human tactics proved superior to Council doctrine. Ships that had never known defeat were being picked apart by enemies that fought like demons. The humans attacked with precision that bordered on supernatural while showing no mercy to forces that had come to exterminate them. All ships, fall back to hyperspace, Zixthor finally ordered as his formation lost over half its strength. Retreat immediately, but even retreat proved impossible against human technology. The new quantum torpedoes could track targets through hyperspace, while void-capable fighters pursued fleeing ships across multiple star systems. What had begun as a punishment expedition became a route that would haunt Council nightmares for generations. The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves throughout civilized space. The mighty Council enforcement fleet had been crushed by enemies who fought with weapons and tactics that seemed impossible. More importantly, the battle had been broadcast live by human transmitters to every species in the galaxy. Captain Sarah Mitchell watched the recordings from her engineering station on New Terra. The images showed Council dreadnoughts being torn apart by human fighters that moved like living things through space. It was propaganda more effective than any speech about human capabilities. The whole galaxy just watched us defeat their strongest fleet, Mitchell told Colonel Baker as they reviewed the battle footage. Every species that ever felt oppressed by the Council now knows there's an alternative. The political consequences proved even more devastating than the military defeat. Species throughout Council territory began questioning why they submitted to leaders who could not protect them from a human force that had been dismissed as insignificant. Rebellions broke out on dozens of worlds as populations demanded the freedom to choose their own allies. On the Altarian homeworld, former Councilor Veltan addressed massive crowds calling for withdrawal from the Council alliance. His blue skin showed the emotional patterns that indicated deep conviction as he spoke to beings who had grown tired of bureaucratic control. The humans offer us partnership while the Council offers us only submission, Veltan declared to the cheering masses. They fight for their beliefs while we negotiate our principles away piece by piece. Back in Sol's system, President Carter received reports of Council member species requesting secret negotiations with human representatives. The victory at Kepler Nebula had proven that humanity was not just a minor irritation, but a legitimate threat to the established order. The shadow war that followed would determine whether the galaxy continued under Council control or embraced the new order that humanity represented. Both sides now knew that peaceful coexistence was impossible and that only one vision of galactic civilization would survive. 5 years after the Battle of the Kepler Nebula, the human-led alliance controlled over 200 star systems across the galaxy. President Carter stood before the assembled representatives of 37 different species in the New Geneva Assembly Hall on Earth. The chamber that had once housed only human politicians now echoed with voices from across known space. Today marks 10 years since our banishment from the Galactic Council, Carter announced to the diverse crowd. Today also marks the birth of true galactic democracy where merit matters more than politics and innovation drives progress instead of tradition. The transformation had been remarkable. Species that had suffered under Council bureaucracy for centuries now thrived under the alliance system that valued results over procedures. The Zephyrians had become master shipbuilders whose vessels combined their natural engineering skills with human weapons technology. The Kethvar provided security for trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for generations. The Nexari had revolutionized construction techniques that allowed rapid development of new worlds. Admiral Kate Sullivan, now Supreme Commander of Alliance forces, oversaw a fleet that made the old Council Navy look like children's toys. Her protege, Admiral James Wright, commanded the new Titan-class dreadnoughts that could defeat entire Council battle groups single-handed. The ships incorporated technology from dozens of species working together instead of the standardized designs that had made Council fleets predictable and vulnerable. Admiral Wright, status report on Operation Starbridge, Sullivan requested during the daily command briefing. Wright consulted his tactical display showing fleet positions throughout. Alliance territory. All sectors report green status. Our patrol forces have eliminated the last pirate strongholds in the outer systems. Trade volume has increased 40% since we took over security duties from the Council. The success of Alliance security forces had convinced many neutral species to request membership. Unlike the Council's complicated admission process that could take decades, the Alliance welcomed new members based on simple criteria: commitment to mutual defense, willingness to share technology for the common good, and respect for the independence of member species. Dr. Chris Williams had become the Alliance's chief science officer, coordinating research projects that involved brilliant minds from dozens of different civilizations. His laboratories on New Terra had made breakthrough discoveries in consciousness transfer technology, quantum computing, and stellar engineering that revolutionized life throughout human space. The rate of innovation is unprecedented, Williams reported to President Carter during their weekly science briefing. When species with different perspectives work together without bureaucratic interference, they solve problems that seemed impossible for centuries. Dr. Maria Santos had established the Alliance Xenobiology Institute, which cataloged over 10,000 previously unknown life forms discovered on worlds the Council had ignored. Her teams worked with alien biologists to develop medical treatments and agricultural techniques that improved life for billions of beings. The turning point in galactic politics came when the Altarian Empire formally requested admission to the Alliance. Former High Counselor Veltan had led a successful revolution that overthrew his planet's council-aligned government and established a democratic republic based on the Alliance model. Ambassador Peter Johnson, Carter's special envoy, negotiated the historic agreement that brought one of the Council's founding members into the human-led organization. The ceremony took place on Altair Prime, broadcast live throughout the galaxy to show that even the most powerful Council species were abandoning their old masters. "The Council promised us peace through stagnation," Veltan declared during the signing ceremony. "The Alliance offers us peace through progress and the freedom to reach our full potential." The defection of Altair triggered an avalanche of similar moves by other Council members. Species after species abandoned the bureaucratic empire that had controlled them for millennia. The Vorthak Union, the Crystalline Republics, and even the ancient Ethereum Confederation announced their intention to join the Alliance. High Counselor Zethkar found himself presiding over an empty chamber as his authority crumbled. Only 12 species remained loyal to the Council, mostly those too afraid of change to embrace the new order. The mighty organization that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was dying, killed by its own inability to adapt. "How did this happen?" Zethkar asked his few remaining advisors as they met in what had once been the center of galactic power. "We had everything under control. The humans were contained. Our authority was absolute." His intelligence chief, Theklar, provided the bitter truth. "We underestimated them completely. We thought banishing them would eliminate the threat. Instead, we freed them to build something better than what we offered." The final blow came when the Council's own military forces began defecting to the Alliance. Admiral Kixval of the 4th Battle Fleet brought his entire command over to the human side after witnessing how Alliance forces protected civilian populations, while Council doctrine treated them as acceptable casualties. "I swore an oath to protect innocent life," Kixval explained in his public broadcast announcing the defection. "The Alliance honors that oath while the Council ignores it." Captain Daniel Brooks, now an admiral himself, welcomed the defecting Council forces at a ceremony on New Terra. Former enemies stood alongside human officers as equals rather than subordinates, their ships integrated into Alliance squadrons that operated with efficiency the old regime had never achieved. The transformation was not just military, but cultural. Alliance worlds developed new art forms that combined elements from multiple species. Children grew up speaking languages from across the galaxy while learning science and philosophy from the greatest minds of different civilizations. The rigid, Hierarchies that had defined council society gave way to fluid cooperation based on ability rather than species or seniority. Dr. Amy Rodriguez perfected the final version of void drive technology that allowed instant travel between any points in the galaxy. The new transportation network connected Alliance worlds so efficiently that distance became irrelevant. A scientist on Earth could collaborate in real time with colleagues on worlds hundreds of light years away. President Carter stood on the observation deck of the new Alliance headquarters orbiting Earth as he watched ships from dozens of species arrive for the first Galactic Congress. The Democratic Assembly would replace the Authoritarian Council with a system that gave every member species an equal voice in decisions affecting their future. "We succeeded beyond our wildest dreams," Carter told Admiral Sullivan as they watched the historic gathering. 10 years ago, we were outcasts, banished for being too dangerous. Today, we lead a civilization that embraces the very qualities the Council feared. The final scene showed Alliance exploration fleets preparing to venture beyond the galactic rim into regions no one had ever explored. Captain Steve Baker commanded the lead vessel Discovery as it approached the massive space gate that would carry them to distant galaxies where new civilizations waited to be contacted. The Council spent thousands of years managing decline, Baker told his mixed-species crew as they prepared for humanity's greatest adventure. "We're going to spend the next 1,000 years exploring possibilities they never imagined. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had always intended."